So Donald Trump starting off the week in one of his favorite places, on top of the polls for the Republican nomination for president, but one of his fellow candidates not too far behind. A new CBS poll shows Trump at 27%. He's been basically in that range for the past several weeks. You've got Ben Carson in the second spot there at 21%. Worth noting this is a plus or minus 5% margin of error on this poll. The rest of the candidates in single digits, and we're getting a closer look at what would happen if Donald Trump wins the nomination. The majority say that they would support him. 29% say enthusiastically. 42% say they would support him with, quote, reservations. With poll numbers in his favor, Trump says he is in this race for the duration.
You know what I'll say to you? I'm not getting out. I'm not going. I'm going to win it, and I'm not getting out, okay?
Okay, there's our headline.
Because that way there can't be any dispute.
Here now, Brit Hume, Fox News senior political analyst. Brit, good morning to you. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Martha. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. You know, the New York Times says that he's coming up with an exit strategy, that he's plotting how he's going to get out of the race. He says, you know, why on earth would I do that? And some say, boy, if, you know, Jeb Bush had these numbers, people would be declaring this whole thing over.
That's a good point. There's no reason on earth that I can think of why he would be planning an exit anytime soon. Now, he may have in the back of his mind an idea of what he would do if, you know, his poll numbers tanked and it became clear to him that he couldn't win. But he's nowhere near that yet. He's still winning, and his lead is holding, basically. Now, I think, you know, he may have not that much upside. And, you know, you see his unfavorable ratings are high even among Republicans. So if you don't support him, a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with him. But he's still in the best position of anybody. Yeah,
he certainly is. You know, and you take a look at the rest of these folks, and it's a tough slog for them at the moment. But their big argument, Brit, is always that, you know, we're too far out. You know, we had Chris Christie here this morning. He said, you know, we got to go all the way through the football season, essentially, before people start actually caucusing and voting in this election. Do you think that's a decent argument on their part?
Well, it's a hopeful argument on their part, but I think people are increasingly paying attention to this. And, of course, Trump is so eye-catching that I don't think there's any doubt that he's gotten more people interested in this race, and different people than otherwise would have been, than any candidate in recent memory. So there's an awful lot of interest in this race simply because he's in it and because he's doing well enough that he is still capturing so much of the media attention, and that looks like it's going to continue indefinitely. So he's a force to be reckoned with, and I think people are getting it. It'll be interesting to see, Martha, tomorrow night when the Democrats debate, how the television ratings are for that debate against the astronomical ratings that the first two Republican debates have gotten. Yeah. That'll tell us something about the interest in the race and the interest in the race between the parties.
We were talking about that earlier. I mean, what do you think Donald Trump's first tweet will be if the numbers aren't what they were for the Republicans? He's going to say, gee, somebody very, very important to these numbers seems to be missing from this, right?
Well, I would say that those numbers would be telling, that people don't think they don't think the Democratic race is as interesting. So there is a school of thought, Martha, that says Trump is drawing interest to the Republican race and will be good for whoever eventually wins. That may be so.
We took a look at the unfavorable numbers as well in that same poll, the CBS poll that just came out. And this, you know, if you're in the Trump camp, it's concerning. 53% have an unfavorable view of him. 48% have an unfavorable view of Bush. And Hillary's numbers, we should point out, were similar in this. And just for contrast, Rubio's at 25%. You know, fairly small number of people have an unfavorable view of him. How essential is that when it comes to the real voting in this race down the road?
Well, at the moment, that's something that as people eventually get around to going to the polls and they look at a candidate who's a majority of people look at unfavorably. That's all people. That's not just Republicans. Right. It may give them pause about voting for that candidate. And that number I would think would be particularly alarming for Jeb Bush, because we've already seen that he has real resistance in his own party. And this suggests that he's got nearly majority resistance nationally with all voters or all registered voters. Yeah. So he's got an even steeper hill to climb by far than Donald Trump does. Yeah. And for Rubio, that's pretty good news. 25% of people view him unfavorably in a country as split as evenly as this country is, that's not too bad.
Yeah, you got a lot of Republican candidates in this race who most people thought wouldn't even be in the race if Jeb Bush decided to run because they thought he would be so dominant. And boy, that has not been the story at all. Fascinating.
Yeah, not at all.
That's for sure. Britt, thanks so much. See you next
You bet,
time.
Martha.